This is DIY Cyber Guy with David W. Schrofer. Every week, he will show you how cybersecurity can be as easy as locking up your house at night. Now, here is your host, David W. Schrofer.
Welcome back, everybody, to DIY Cyber Guy. This is episode 78, Cybercriminals Aggressively Shifting to Easier Targets, Small and Medium Businesses. Now, this is a hair on fire 4 out of 5, and this is for every business of every size, but particularly if you're a business owner or an executive at a small, medium-sized business, generally described as less than 1,000 employees, you're being targeted more than you think you are. And here's evidence of that. So in 2024, business email compromise and fund transfer fraud accounted for 60% of all cyber insurance claims, with the average loss reaching about $44,000 per incident. And that's according to the Coalition 2025 Cyber Claims Report. And you can get the link to that in the show notes. Just go to DIY Cyber Guy and search episode 78. The average ransomware claim is nearly $292,000, and that number is down from the previous year and the year before that. Now, you might think that's good news that the size of each ransomware claim is down, but it's not. That's actually evidence, because the number of incidents are up. That's actually evidence that smaller businesses are being targeted. Logically, a Fortune 1000 or Fortune 100 company is going to have more money in the bank to pay a bigger ransom for a single event than a small and medium-sized business. So the fact that incidents are up and average payout is down is real evidence that the payouts are smaller because the target companies are smaller too. And more evidence of that, according to Cork, which is a security company that we'll talk about in a moment, Cork witnessed 2.3 million compliance events focused on SMBs in the last year, and that volume is trending up. So more events, lower payout, and real evidence that SMBs are the targets and not the bigger companies. Also, the most common payout of a Cork warranty is the result of business email compromise. And more evidence that business email compromise is on the rise is that Cork reports a 709% increase in business email compromise year over year. That's a huge, huge jump. So here with me today to talk about all this is Dan Candy, the CEO of Cork, which is the company I've been quoting. Cork redefines how managed service providers and small businesses approach cyber risk. With a background, and Dan has a background with AWS and Dell, and he brings a unique perspective on why traditional cyber insurance isn't enough and how Cork's innovative cyber warranty model is changing the game. Welcome, Dan.
Hi, David. Thanks for having me today.
It's really great to have you on the show with such a critical issue as this. So let me start here. You've got thousands of customers at Cork. Do you have any real examples of how everyday business people are being tricked by cyber criminals?
Unfortunately, yes. And as you mentioned, we're entirely focused on SMB. And today, that's SMB in North America. And what we're seeing is a rapid increase on the business email compromise side of things because it's an easier target. You also mentioned that I've got some experience on the Dell and AWS side. And
Yes.
so I've witnessed the enterprise level of security and the amount of money and resources being spent on the enterprise side. I specifically left that to be focused on SMB because this is where I think the true heartbeat of what we do every day is really pumping. And this is where my passion is. And this is where the true need of technology, resources, and brain power is. So unfortunately, the threat actors realize it is easier to attack smaller businesses than it is larger businesses, which empirically we probably all can understand that. And they have figured out, well, why not try to go steal $50,000 or $150,000 rather than try to go steal millions of dollars? And so that's why there's such a spike in the volume of these attacks. And so what we've been seeing is that business email compromise is the easiest way to do it because they can just blast us all, right? We all get these emails asking us to sign into something or do something that we know we probably shouldn't be doing. And all that they're trying to do is get us to put in our credentials to something. And a recent example, for instance, is a law firm that we had in Canada, and she was asked to put her credentials into her SharePoint, which she did. It looked like it was a super friendly, highly professional email from a colleague of hers at another law firm, and she did it. And as she did and entered it, it just didn't quite feel right. And sure enough, as she entered it within moments, it activated something so that her managed service provider realized that something was off. Cork also realized our software notified the managed service provider. And so both the technology and the client all kind of went, oops, this isn't right. So within 39 minutes, the managed service provider was able to remediate and kind of lock everything down, make sure that nothing had gone out. But what was on the other side of that SharePoint was 10,000 confidential records for this attorney.
Or yeah, right,
Yeah,
which is equivalent to her career if that truly got public.
and,
Those
and
clients would not be her clients anymore, and they might hire another lawyer to sue her, right?
yeah, absolutely. And this, and she worked primarily with a lot of women and children, and there's a lot of highly sensitive information that she had. Well, luckily, she was able to, she and us and the managed service provider were able to make sure everything was secure. And we've done all of the work, which is why we're able to, kind of talk through this particular case. But this is happening more and more. And I think there were 150,000, of these per day, right? Like that are
Sure,
actually
yeah.
occurring. That's the average number from 2024. It's just insane.
I'm curious about something you said in there that, within that 39 minutes in your real life example, you said that an alarm bell went off at Cork, and Cork notified the managed service provider that this law firm was using. The law firm was your client, but you also had the ability to send a red flag or an incident report real time to the MSP. Did I follow that correctly?
Yeah, so the way that Quark operates is we're a super connector for risk insights, and then we wrap the whole thing up with financial protection. So what that really means is we work with IT service providers, managed service providers. We believe in the MSP community and that they are the superheroes in working with SMB. All right. They're picking and choosing their cybersecurity stack and IT stack in order to manage the clients.
Hmm.
And we connect all of them, and through a single pane of glass, are able to make sure that all the open windows and doors are actually getting closed appropriately, and that there's efficiency out of that stack. And so that's where that notification, visibility, compliance monitoring comes from. So we're working hand in hand with our MSPs to support joint clients. And
Very
then,
interesting. So
oh,
you're augmenting the alarm bells that they would have internally.
100%. Because if
Yeah.
you think of what's happened in the last few years, right, we've all become more and more cybersecurity focused, and we've purchased more SaaS solutions and on-prem solutions, right? So there's a
Mm,
mix in this hybrid world, and then we're all trying to gain efficiency out of it. And that also means that that we're all not everything is optimized. And if you've got a car, right, how do you make sure that all of the air pressures are set perfectly, that all of the
right.
fluids are at the ideal level, right? In the winter and in the summer, right? And at max load. And, if you're hauling something or if you're not, right? And if you
Mhm.
kind of expand that silly analogy with, 10 clients or 100 clients, and then you remember that clients are always changing because they're hiring and they're firing. And then you have this silly thing called bad guys and bad girls, right? The threat actors.
Yeah.
We're always
Yeah.
trying to get in. And so you have this ridiculously dynamic world that we're living in. And that's
Yeah.
where the value of Cork is because we are calming the seas to make sure that there's actually some sanity to all of that and that there is efficiency in the tooling and that there is visibility across all of the tooling and what the people, what the humans are doing across the
Mhm.
clients. Can help make the world more secure and drive efficiency across the technology.
It really is a fascinating model. It's you have a different view of these incidents than the MSP may have. So working together with them in partnership with them, trying to protect the financial liability of the client at the same time, working hand in hand to make sure that the attack doesn't get worse than it has to, right? So it's one thing to come in and clean up a mess after it has fully run its course. It's another to stop it, within say 39 minutes to make sure that that damage is goes from a small headache that they may or may not need to report to their clients to the end of the career and the end of the law firm itself, because which very possibly could have happened if the threat actor actually got these documents, actually threatened her with them, or actually released them in the public.
100%. And then remember, all of these things cost money, right? So in the case of this
Sure.
particular law firm, the managed service provider had to spend many thousands of dollars to do all of the incident response, associated with it, because they
Mhm.
had put Cork warranty or Cork assurance for this particular law firm. It cost the law firm $0 in order to do it. I pay all of that. The cork warranty does. At one
Okay.
point, we even paid the for a pizza bill, right? Because the managed service provider team has got to eat, right? We all got to eat. That's
Got it. That
that's what I love.
fits.
I got an SLA that within an hour I'm handing over an electronic credit card for 10 grand. And that within 2 weeks, within 14 days, I'm reimbursing 100% of the out-of-pocket expenses of both the client and the managed service provider. Because SMB in general has 18 days of cash on hand. And that's why we exist, is to show up and make
Mhm.
sure that SMB is staying in business and is not, because they
And is
have the
not crushed by a single incident.
yeah.
So
Cyber insurance is really strong and is getting better at supporting SMB, but ultimately was designed for enterprise. And it can take, 5, 6, 7 months to pay out. And that's even if somebody has cyber insurance. Uh,
right.
rough, Roughly 30% of SMB has cyber insurance today. It's a minuscule portion, right? So who's there to
Hmm.
support? The managed service providers and its Cork who are actually doing the work to make sure that SMB is surviving these attacks.
Okay. I want to say to my listeners before my next question that Cork is not a sponsor of the podcast, but I personally am fascinated by this model. And the purpose of this podcast is to bring new ideas, new information to my listeners. My next question dives deeper into what Cork does, because I think my listeners should know. And the question is this: right now, you have SMB owners and executives listening to what you're saying, listening to this podcast.
Yeah.
Some of them, I guarantee, are saying, I don't need that. It doesn't affect me. I've got an MSP. They've got a great reputation. They keep me secure. My employees are smart. I tell them every day in one way or another, do not click a link. We have the little pop-up messages that say external email, be extra cautious. Don't click anything. So they're not going to do that. I don't need insurance protection for this category. I'm covered. What would you say to that person?
I love it. And I I love our smart, gifted employees. Uh, and I wish all of my employees were as smart as your employees. And I wish I was always as alert as I want to be myself. For instance,
Yeah.
Uh, about 3 weeks ago, my mother called me up and she said, I think I just got scammed out of a few $100s in Apple gift cards. And she walked me through a scenario. And sure enough, she had spent about 450 bucks. And I said, Mom, this is the world that we're living in. And,
Wow.
she was crying and humbled, right? Last night I happened to be talking to a friend of mine who owns a construction company here in Colorado, and he's changing all of his bank accounts and moving to a different QuickBooks because one of his employees had clicked a link that she shouldn't have and had exposed some credentials that she shouldn't have. I just this will only get this will only get more challenging for all of us because
Hmm.
the volume is increasing and the threat actors are leveraging tools, enterprise grade tools, to try to find any of those open windows and doors that I refer to, or to just get us at a moment when we just aren't paying attention. I'll give you another example.
Sure.
When I look at the three industries that threat actors are coming after, it's financial services, it's healthcare, meaning like the non-enterprise grade healthcare, like the rural or the consortium doctors' offices and dental offices, and then it's construction services. And we had a construction company, this is about 2 months ago, 2.5 months ago, a construction company that's protected by a really good managed service provider. Uh, and the MSP has been around for about 20 years. The construction company has been around for 50 years. And if you know anything about construction, money is moving all the time, right? There's so many invoices coming in, money getting paid out.
Yeah.
There's just constantly, paying for materials and services. It's kind of
Right.
nuts.
Hey, I'm
And
delivering a load of concrete right now, but you got to pay right now, or I'm turning the truck around. Right. I mean, that there's not pretty good chance that that's actually happening in that moment.
you got it. If you think about how
Yeah.
many things goes into building a commercial property or a home, right? There's a lot of different people and a lot of different businesses involved. And the threat
Yeah.
actors know this. And so that's why this has become the number one targeted area that I'm seeing in my particular business. And so
Yeah.
for this particular construction company, what had happened is they're going after the auxiliary services. They're going after they went after the architecture firm. And so they got into the architecture firm through a business email compromise, and they got into the email server, and they had done it months prior. They get in
Mhm.
and they
And then they
just
wait and they look and they observe for as long as they can, and they map everything that they can find. Yeah.
that's what they do. Yep, they sit and they wait. And in this case, they'd waited about 4 months and they understood exactly where the invoices were going and what the normal invoice was. And this was a $21,000 invoice that was going to the construction company. And they knew the three people at the construction company who received the email in order to make changes. And they sent the
Mm.
email and said, hey, we've got a new bank account number that we had set up. And then please send it to this ACH. And it went out, and the construction company looked at it and said, yep, these are the normal things that we receive. They did not pick up the phone to verify that a change had been made. And because this was the only thing, none of the managed service providers' tooling actually picked it up. And so this was a really well protected. They had
Yeah.
advanced endpoint protection from SentinelOne. They had remote monitoring and management from Ninja. They had email security from Microsoft. They had backup from Datto. They had done the security awareness training from Infima. Like
Yeah.
they were really well protected and managed.
Right.
$21,000 went out the door and nobody knew the difference, right? Until the
Right.
architecture firm came asking.
And said we didn't get paid.
We didn't get paid. And so this is the type of experience that is happening all like on a regular basis because the threat actors are getting pretty darn smart about it.
Yeah.
And and so regular training, right? Some additional checks and balances, especially for anybody in the accounting department, right? And
Yeah.
working with experts to put in some of these protocols so that these things don't happen is the only way forward. And in this particular
Sure.
case, they were a Cork customer, which is how I know this story. And I wrote the
Hmm.
check to reimburse the construction company for the $21,000. So nobody
Yep.
was out of pocket, right?
Right.
That's the cool business part of this one. That's the happy ending.
And so that makes it smart to have that insurance. But I want to point out something about that story. Um, a lot of the listeners that are listening to this podcast right now think I'm too smart to get fooled by that. And one of the things I say over and over, especially when I hear a story about that, think about how sophisticated that attack was. The attacker knew exactly what the normal recipients and senders of these emails were with the architect firm. They knew exactly the tone of voice that they used in their emails when they asked for money or payment. They knew exactly where the payment was going to go, and they did that over months and months of quietly watching all the transactions happening back and forth. So when the fraudulent email was sent to the accounting department of this construction company, it must have looked perfect. It was from the right person. It was written in their tone with their voice. It was asking for something that was perfectly appropriate. And so in their mind, they're thinking about their training, saying, all these boxes are checked. This looks okay. I'm going to go ahead and do it. So smart people get fooled, not because they've suddenly become less smart or less diligent or less careful. It's because the threat actors are really getting good and they're willing to research and wait for an opportunity to send a fraudulent email like that. It's such a great example. And the title of this podcast is DIY. The one thing that will defeat that attack every single time is an out of band check. So if you get an email that says do something like this, send them a text, pick up the phone and say, real quick check, did you just send me an email at 10:59 today asking for a change? Yes, okay, great. It's done. But it only takes a second. But before you, especially if you're working in an accounting department, that phone call or that out of band communication, using some other means of communication with that same person will work every time. Just it's not something that everybody has time to do, but having a warranty behind that sounds like a great way to make sure that there wasn't that liability at the end of that particular incident.
David, we are all so busy. I don't
Yeah,
know many people you can name in your life that have a lot of free time on their hands. I don't know many business professionals that are just lounging around. Do you?
yeah, negative.
Right? And the story we just talked about are people that are very thoughtful in their planning and are taking months in order to steal $21,000, right?
Hmm.
And and so we can all be hopeful that we aren't going to get hit, and hope is not going to save the day.
Yeah,
And when I was at AWS, I worked there for over 4 years, and one of my favorite things is that I was professionally trained in is to get away from hope as a business practice and into mechanisms.
yes,
And what you're talking about is what is a simple mechanism or business practice that you can add, that we can add, that will become a new, you know, a new thing that somebody does in the business to disrupt the threat actor. And
hmm,
that is, all right, we are going to pick anything involving money now requires you to pick up the phone and to talk to the person on the other end. And the
right,
money, the ACH won't get changed until I get the verification. I get the text verification. It requires the outreach and the validation, the
exactly,
unsolicited verification.
right,
Because then,
exactly.
right, then you know. And I'm only talking about $21,000. There are other
Yeah,
stories that are the 160, the 300, right? The hundreds of thousands of dollars that are career ending dollar amounts that are putting
yeah,
businesses out. And these are businesses that don't have cyber insurance or don't
yeah,
have a Cork solution. And it goes from a really, really bad day to, oh my gosh, what are we going to be doing here? And I'm not a
right.
doomsday type of guy. And so if you can just do these 5 minutes or these 15-minute disruptions, as part of a new mechanism, it's life-changing.
Right. So, I mean, couple that with also having a warranty protection, real financial protection, so that bad incident that might be embarrassing, you might have a lot of explaining to do to customers, vendors, others, clients, maybe. It's not the end of the business. It's not the end of a career. Maybe something in your HR file, but it's not the end. It's not the end if you've got financial coverage to make up for that loss.
Yeah, absolutely. These, cyber insurance is not mandatory for SMB today,
Yeah,
right? Car insurance is mandatory for all of us, right? But cyber insurance is not.
is not right.
Someday it probably will. But we're not living in a highly regulatory cyber insurance, cyber world yet. And I think it's upon each of us to think about the types of things that we want to do. And unfortunately, people are being put in pain, and then they're learning that way.
Right,
I'm really grateful that you're doing this, that you're talking to people, because education is the best way to think about making adjustments in our life. And if we can learn without the big pain, right? To
right.
tell a very personal story, I had to quit drinking, right? I quit drinking about 16 years ago because alcohol was the thing that humbled my butt. I couldn't, it was the thing that kicked my butt up and down the street, right? And so I had to get sober. And I never want to be humbled in that massive way again. I never need to get a DUI, for instance. Thank you very
Hmm.
much. Right? I'll take little humbles where my wife can say, "Hey, would you mind picking those things off the bedroom floor?" Or
Yes.
my kid will ask me to do something, and I'll take that humility all day long, right?
Yeah.
The micro humbles.
Micro
That's
humbles.
Micro humble.
Yeah.
Right? That's where we're learning every day. And that's where, we're
Exactly.
listening to you, Dave, right? And we're
Yeah.
reading things. And we want to learn from other people's mistakes. And, maybe we're getting micro humbled in our own businesses where we've got to change our own bank accounts, or, somebody stole our identity and now we've got to change our own credit cards or do something like that, where, you know,
Exactly.
hundreds of, or maybe a couple thousand, or it's a bunch of our time that is being wasted. But the reality,
Exactly.
I'm witnessing 2.3 million compliance events in the last 12 months. I'm witnessing hundreds of thousands of dollars, on a regular basis being stolen. Like, like, please, folks, do yourself a favor and take the extra, make sure that you and your employees are taking the extra 15 minutes just to call and double check that your money is going to the place that it's supposed to go.
And the one of the salient things that you said that I really want to make sure sinks in with every listener is the fact that the threat actors in your last example took 4 months of observation, scheming, calculating how they were going to steal money, and the money they got away with was $21,000. So there was a day, if we were having the same conversation 2 years ago, that's certainly an investment that a threat actor would make attacking a Fortune 50 company, because that would be a 5 million, $10 million payout at the end of that, because that's the size of the checks that they might have had access to. The fact that they're willing to do that kind of diligence, they had to use probably a combination of attacks to get into the system in a way that they could observe the emails. They had to be thoughtful in what they were observing and try to figure out who to target. They had to do a lot of work to get that amount of money, and I'm sorry, $21,000 is a lot of money. I'm not trying to minimize that, but that same effort 4 or 5 years ago would never ever have been spent on anything that didn't have millions, in the $1 million range or multiple $1 million range. That's a remarkable shift in my view.
I couldn't agree with you more. And again, I spent a lot of time working with large, global enterprise.
Yeah.
And at AWS, I got to see the volume of resources that the largest companies in the world are spending on cybersecurity. And
Mhm.
That's one of the main reasons why threat actors have moved into smaller and medium-sized businesses. It's because
Yep.
those doors are becoming impenetrable. Uh,
Impenetrable, exactly.
and think about the national toll scam texts. I don't know how if you get those. I certainly do,
I get those. Yes, absolutely.
right?
Your car is
And
going to be impounded. You won't be able to drive on a highway unless you click this link and pay this bill right now.
I
Yeah.
drive on multiple toll roads, and
Yep.
I've been tempted more than once. I'm like, oh, I think that looks pretty real, and I
Yeah.
have to work in cybersecurity, right? So all it takes is a few of us to be clicking on those and entering credentials to deal with
Yep.
those things, and people are
Exactly.
making money that way. So, and unfortunately, this is the world that we're living in, and it's not going to go back to the other way. So, anything that we can do as a community to support one another, the better. Look, my entire
Exactly.
framework of success, whether it's in the family or work, is that success is an output of love plus performance. We all have to show up
Yeah.
and do the things that we've got to do every day, but we got to
Yeah.
love one another along the way. There's integrity in what we do. There's visibility and accountability. So however we can help each other, like learn from one another and provide value, whether it's in our in schools or like whatever we're doing, like we got to help. And by sharing these messages, honestly, you're doing the right thing here.
Dan, given all the bad news we've been delivering on in this particular episode, I'm going to end on that high note of exactly what you just said. I couldn't have said it better myself, and it's a perfect place to stop. So, Dan, last question for you: where can people find out more about what you do?
You bet. Cork can be found at www.corkinc.com. And my name is Dan Candy, and if I can ever be of service, you can find me on LinkedIn, of course. And honestly, David, thank you so much for taking the time to talk about these subjects and sharing the word of what you're doing and teaching folks what's going on in the world. It means a lot. So much
My
love.
pleasure, and thanks for being here. Right back at you. Thanks for being here and sharing the really valuable real life experiences that you've dealt with at Cork and with your clients. So thanks for being here. I'd love to have you on again sometime.
Thank you kindly.
That's all the time we have today. Remember, for the show notes from this episode, or to listen to any of our past episodes, or to get a free chapter from my book, Digital Habits, just go to DIYCyberguy.com. And if you want to buy my book, just go to Amazon.com or BarnesandNoble.com and search the keywords Digital Habits 5 Simple Tips. If you have questions or an idea for the show, just email me at questions@DIYCyberguy.com. And if this show helps you stay safe online, please click the share button and send it to everyone you think we can help. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to DIY Cyber Guy. The information, opinions, and recommendations presented in this broadcast are for general information only, and we have not knowingly divulged any information that would conflict with any of our non-disclosure or confidentiality agreements. Enjoy the internet safely.